The first step of the next build is actually going to be configuring our IDE. So I use Visual Studio, which you can download for free for Microsoft directly in the browser. And I'm going to start by showing you my favorite extensions. So the first one is this ES7 React Redux GraphQL. And this helps us with our shortcuts for creating components. So you just have to type RAFCE and then it'll create the component for you. The next one is JavaScript and TypeScript Nightly. And this gives you auto completions and advanced features for both of those. And then finally, Tailwind CSS IntelliSense. This helps with autocomplete and linking for our CSS classes. Next thing I'm going to do is fire up GitHub, find my account, and then create a new repository for this project. So I'm going to give it a name, a quick description, and a README. And then I'll just go ahead and click Create Repository. And then from here, we can grab our link from that code dropdown, fire up a command terminal. And in here, in the folder I want to put it in, I'm going to type git clone and then paste that link and then CD into the folder that it makes for me. To actually create the app, I'm going to run npx create next app at latest and then OK to proceed and give the project a name and then hit yes on the defaults. And this is just creating the basic next app for us. I'm going to CD into that project we just made, and I'm going to run it locally. And I got an error that I have an outdated version of Node, so I ran npm I node. And then here I am firing it up locally and allowing so that I can install Node. And so as I open it up, this is just the basic next that we'll change and clean out. In Visual Studio Code, I'm going to right-click and add folder to the workspace and find that project that we just made, add it, and then I'm going to run a git status. We can see we've got our branches, and all of our files are untracked. So I'm going to git add period to add all of our files, and then git commit -m, and then your message. I'm just going to do initial commit. And then git push, and this will help us start our source control. So if I fire back up GitHub, I can see I've got my project pushed successfully, so we can see all of the files there. Next, I'm gonna run git checkout -b dev to create a dev branch, and then merge in main, but it's already up to date. And now we can get started. The first file I'm going to open up is this page.tsx, and this is basically the home page, so you can see some of the text that we saw on that next page. And we're just going to entirely clean this out. And then we're going to throw in a div, and this will be our own home page. And then for the CSS, we're going to take out anything that has to do with the background so that we can kind of customize it to ourselves. So just any lines that have that background, we're going to clean out. And then from here, we're going to create a new file in the app folder, and we're going to call it navbar.tsx. And this is going to be our component for navbar. And you can see that RAFCE, that's our shortcut for creating a component. And I'm going to clean out the divs, replace it with a nav tab, because this is going to be for our navbar. And then from here, I'm going to add a space for a logo. And the href is just going to be the home, but for now I'll just write logo. And we did not have link from next link, so when I control period on that red line, it auto imported for me. And then I'm going to create an unordered list and a list item with a link for the dashboard. And that href is just going to be the slash. And then I'm also going to create a page for gear, which we won't really be working with too much. I'm going to open layout.tsx, and I'm going to add our navbar to our body. And you can see I need to import it up top. And then it's self-closing. And then I'm actually going to add a main tag and throw the children inside of main. And then let's run it locally. And you can just keep it running throughout this project if you want. So we've got our navbar, but you can see it's really ugly. So we're going to actually look at Tailwind CSS docs and their utility classes for our styling. And then Shad UI, this is a component library that just has really beautiful like buttons and input groups. And you just can install them on the command prompt. So up here, we're going to start with a class name for our unordered list. In these, it's not something I memorize and type every single time. I'm like following along things that I've already used. So you can just put what I have, or if you want to play around with it, that's great too. And so right now what I'm doing is making the nav horizontal and kind of spacing our items out a little bit better. And so you can see now I've got them at the top. And now it's time to actually get to work on our page.tsx, which is our home page, and we want to have cards for each of our activities. So I'm grabbing this npx add card, which I'll paste down below. And this, I still have my local host running, but I just opened up another window or another tab, and then I'm running these installs. And I always do just the neutral. In Shad UI, it creates this components.json for us, and it's got all of their presets and then all of their code for the card. And from here, I'm grabbing our imports from their documentation, and we'll just take their code and then customize it to ourselves. I'm going to grab a few more things from Shad. I'm going to grab their button, so it's just copying and pasting in the command line, and their input, and their label. And so I'm just installing all of these, and then we'll be able to use them on our homepage/dashboard. And then I'm adding the imports at the top for all these, so their add button. And this is what our card looks like. In our page.tsx, I'm going to go ahead and add some class names to our divs, just give these a little bit more styling, get them in the center of our page, and set up in the grid format so that we can have a card for each of our runs. And so I'm adding one more div for the row. And now you can see it lines up a bit better and we can have multiple cards. Next, I'm going to make our gear folder. So right click on app, new folder, and we're going to call it gear. And then inside of that folder, we're going to create a new file called page.tsx. And this is going to be our home page for when you click on the gear tab. And I'm just going to grab everything that we've got in our other page.tsx and paste it. And you can see I'm on the gear page right now. You can tell in the URL, and it looks exactly the same as our dashboard page. Back in our navbar.tsx, I'm going to use path name to get our current path, so which tab we're currently in. And so I'm control period on this red underline, and this will give us the import from Next Navigation. And then instead of having individual links, I'm storing them in an array. And then in JSX, we can actually map all of our links to their own link item. And so you can see me doing that right here. And those open brackets allow us to actually write JavaScript in our equivalent of HTML. So this is JavaScript logic that we're using to actually return each link item. And you can see I just used the link.href and link.label. We want our tab links to be able to have multiple classes, so I'm going to npm I class names so that we can add conditional class formatting. And in here for the class name, I'm actually going to assign it a class names function. And then you can see we can do different texts based on if it's the current path, if it's not the current path, and then if the user's hovering over the tab. And I've got an error, so we actually need to make our navbar a client component. So we need to add that use client directive at the top. And let's fire it up one more time. And I'm just deleting the old links now that we're mapping them out. And you can see we've got different colors based on the condition. All right, now the fun part. So we're gonna actually get all of our activities from Strava. So I'm gonna create an async function in our dashboard page, and it's gonna be a try catch to help with error handling. And it's gonna be an Axios get. So const response equals await Axios get. And we actually need to install npm I Axios. And then we can add the import at the top and then create our get. And so hovering over the get function, you can see what it's expecting. So we need to pass in first our URL, which I got from Strava's API documentation, their get. And then we also need to pass in our params, which for us is going to be our access token. And then I'm going to log what response we get. And then if we get an error, I'm also going to console the error. And now I'm just going to create a simple button, click for activities, and then run our function on click. And so on clicking the click for activities, you can see we get our data array, and there we go, there's our activity. And now back in our terminal, we are going to install Zustand for our store. So this is going to help us manage our state. And to use it, we are going to right click on app and create a new folder called store. So this is going to be our store for managing our state, and then a store.js file. And in here, I'm actually going to pull up the Zustore documentation. And so this is how we create our store, and then we'll just bind our components to it. So export const useStore, and then their special create function for defining the store. And we're going to set activities, because we know we'll have activities, to an empty array. And then we're going to create our fetch activities from Strava asynchronous function. And I'm actually just going to copy what we already have from get all activities, that whole try catch, and paste it in there. And I'm going to import create from Zustand, because it's their function. So we needed that import to use it. And then I'm going to set activities equal to our response.data to actually store them, and then change our fetch activities from Strava to just const activities equals useStore, and then we're just going to grab that state.activities in our page.tsx. And then we're going to also grab the fetch activities from Strava function, and that will be our new onClick function. The useEffect hook it'll run after our page renders, so we want to console log our activities after we get them. We do get an error. Let's see. Okay, I imported the wrong useStore, so we need to import useStore in our page.tsx from our store folder, not I imported the Zustore one. We got an error, we'll come back to that, but for now, I want to take the access token out of our await directly, so we are actually going to make our access token a call to refresh our access token, because Strava's tokens expire really quickly. So we're going to basically copy what we have for our response, and we're going to take our URL for authentication, which is coming from Strava's API, and we're going to put it in this Axios post and use this to refresh our access token. So basically whenever it runs, we don't care what the access token is. It's probably going to be something new every time we use the app. And then I'll paste this down below, but all of these params are coming straight from the documentation. Next, I'm going to add another useEffect hook to our page.tsx, and in here I'm going to fetch activities from Strava, and then I'm adding empty dependency arrays to these useEffect hooks so they only run once after mounting. And then in here, I'm changing our access token so that we're actually getting the data.access token, not the whole array. Go ahead and check locally in the console, and we've got our object printing out our data without having to click a button. Back in our page.tsx, I'm going to add activities to the logging useEffect so that we can console log anytime activities changes. And then I'm going to go in with some more JSX brackets, and when our activities length is greater than 0, that's when we want to render all of our cards of our activities. And then when it hasn't loaded yet, we're just going to show loading activities. And so in here, we're going to take all of our activities and map them each to their own card. And for the card title, I'm just going to do the activity.name, and we need those brackets around it. And then activity.type for the description. And we can clean out this stuff on the inside. We don't need the forms. For the card content, I'm going to show the distance, and the distance from Strava is in meters. So we need to do some calculations to actually get it in miles. So I'm going to divide that by 1600 and then round it to 2 decimal places. And then for the card footer, we can get rid of these buttons, and we can just do our kudos count, which that little symbol right there, that means tab. And so we'll do kudos count, activity.kudos count. And then we're going to assign the type to any, and then just disable the linting rules for this file. And one more quick change we need to make. We need to change these brackets to parentheses because we're just returning the HTML. And we need to give each card a key as an identifier since we are mapping it from the activity. And I'll just set it to the activity ID. And now we can go ahead and check back in locally. And there we go. We've got our nav bar and our dashboard with our activities. And this one's 100 miles. That was manually entered. This was part 1 of my Next Build Strava app series. In the next video, I'm going to be showing you how to store your runs in the database, and we'll be cleaning up this front end some more. Thanks for watching.